Hello and welcome to Entmoot Live. Good evening. It's Thursday, the 18th of March. It's just after 8:30, and welcome to Entmoot Live once again. It's been nearly a month. This is a monthly stream, so that makes sense. Welcome along. We've got a really, really interesting evening of SBG content coming up, I hope. Anyway, we've got lots of different stuff. We've got what I'm calling the MESBG moral maze in a few minutes' time. This is something that I saw this chap George, who's going to be on in a second, post on the Great British Hobbit League Facebook page, and essentially he started a real fiery debate on the old Facebook page about what the sort of fine line or that blurred line between sportsmanship and gamesmanship is in the game, or good generalship, I suppose. So we'll be discussing that in a bit. We'll also have later on, we'll have Ben who's coming on, Ben Foley, who is a really excellent painter. I actually shared some of his work in the chat, in the GBHL earlier in the week. Was it in the week? It must have been, yeah, when I did a post for the GBHL blog, and he's entered some amazing stuff, and he's coming on later just to talk through his strategy and his kind of attitude, I guess, to painting. And also we're going to be talking a bit about the news, all the exciting news, because this weekend is a release weekend. It feels like it's been ages since we had a proper release in the strategy battle game, but there's been lots of teasers with the Ents and of course the Easterlings, so we'll have a chat about that with George in a minute. First, I'll just have a quick dip into some of the comments. Goody, see hello, who's coming in? So we've got Nathan. Good evening. Hello to Frederick. Good evening to Michael. Frederick says double stream week. Yes, it is. Battle Streams in Middle Earth is on tomorrow, and currently writing a paper for uni, but might move on to prepare some stuff for Battle Streams in Middle Earth tomorrow in a few minutes' time. Excellent. And tell us your thoughts on all the new stuff coming on Saturday. We will do just that. But first, it's about time to introduce this evening's guest. It is welcome to the stream. Have a very polite and gracious welcome, please, to George Harold. Hi, good evening.
Hello, evening, and thank you very much for inviting me on.
Oh, well, you're most welcome. I mean, you really did cause a bit of a fiery debate on the old GBHL Facebook page. When was it? It must have been a month or so ago now, when you came up with this kind of this conundrum, this conundrum of sorts. Just briefly, before we get into who you are and what your hobby history is all about. What was that conundrum? And and we'll delve into some of the details later. But just the headlines, what were they?
Okay, yeah. So this was a post in the GBHL page about a month ago now, which turned out to be a lot more popular than I was expecting it to be. I'm just seeing it now, and it's got 111 comments there. So yeah, there was a lot of debate about that.
It really was. Yeah,
and I think a very nuanced debate as well. I think there's lots of different people offering quite different and just different perspectives on it. So essentially, I presented three different scenarios, which based on situations which I had encountered in some games recently.
Yeah, and these scenarios were excellently sort of contrived scenarios to kind of tease people and go, well, this is a sort of simplistic idea where you might have to decide which moral side of the fence you would land on, and then you inched up the integrity ometer, if that's a thing.
Yeah. So I think So for three different situations, and I was basically asking, in each of these situations, should you remind your opponent of a rule or an option which they've forgotten about, or which they seem to have forgotten about? Yeah, I don't know if you want to kind of run through those three different situations.
Let's leave them for later when we start delving into that in more detail, because there is definitely plenty to talk about there. So let's leave that for a bit. Just while people are commenting, because lots of people are commenting. Catholic Geekery says go George. So I don't know who, there must be known to you. And lots of people are making Ent based puns. We've got excitement about all the new things. That would be hasty. There's new stuff. Yes, very good. Frederick, can't believe it. Scott says, evening both. Glad to have you chatting while a hobby once again. Great to have you along, Scott. Welcome, George, says Nathan. And you have to stop tree puns and oak. Very good. And Gaetan is in as well. So, okay, first of all, George, we've never met in person. But I saw your.
I think we might have met.
Oh, have we? Oh God! I'm embarrassing myself already.
I think, I'm not sure. I think at Fronis Goals in 2018, I think I might have joined your quiz team.
Oh yes, gosh, yes, I do recognise you now. Yeah. Oh well, yes. Yeah. Well, there you go. It just shows that we can you reunite after all this time. But we don't know each other particularly well. Let's put it that way. So let's as if it's new, and welcome to everyone else as well, George. But just tell me a little bit about yourself in the hobby. I mean, I always like to find out a bit about, well, where did you start in the hobby? Did you start with the Battle Games magazines, or was it something else? What got you in? And we'll talk about what kind of hobbyist you are in a second. But where did it all begin for you?
Well, it was shortly after the Battle Games magazines finished. So I started with the Mines of Moria box set in Christmas 2006.
Oh, cool.
And then played a lot as a kid, mostly with my brother and friends. And then I stopped playing for a while. I think that's kind of when the Hobbit stuff started coming out. So like about 2012 or so. I just it was I suppose a bit weird really. And I stopped playing. I stopped collecting and painting, but I did still follow the hobby a lot. I still watched James and Jamie's old stuff on the GBHL podcast, and then I was kind of watching that for years really, kind of always thinking, maybe eventually I'll start
maybe
playing
one
again.
day. Yeah. I know the feeling.
Indeed, yeah. And then when the new edition came out, 2.5 years ago now, that's kind of a big spur for me to get kind of stuck in again.
Fabulous. And I mean, based on your Facebook post, that sort of the reason I got you on here, and I sort of thought maybe you're a competitive player. But what would you call yourself? Would you say you're a competitive player? Would you say you're just in it for the painting, or a jack of all trades?
I think a good mix, really. I definitely am a competitive player, but I mean, certainly not too. I think, put it this way, I think I'm quite competitive in how I play. I think in my army lists, I'm quite a thematic player. So yeah, I suppose
that's an interesting balance, actually. Yeah. So if you start with a sort of, a real fluffy list, and then just crush people with the way you play, and ruin their time because they think it's a fluffy army, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, try at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose when I go to a tournament, I'm generally aiming to finish top half. So.
I think I also aim for that, and not often do I actually achieve it. And so you sort of say you're a gamer. What about your painting? So I've got some really, really lovely photos of some of your stuff. I mean, first of all, what are you working on at the moment, or what have you most recently finished for SBG?
So I finished the new plastic Theoden last week. I didn't send any pictures of that because I haven't done his base yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I got Theoden, I've got Gamling, and I've just assembled some Rohan Royal Guard.
Yeah. So we're looking now at some of your Rohan, and it looks lovely. Are those what kind of bases are those? They look potentially like Generation Shift bases.
They are, yeah, they are.
You
indeed,
see.
Yeah. So that was. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that Matt Davies from Generation Shift was only on this last month. So yeah, he's a friend of the show.
Yeah, so that was a Riders of AMA Army, which I kind of built and took to Throne Skulls last year. Not Throne Skulls, to the grand
tournament. In 2019. Oh, the one where everyone was talking about COVID and all that, and perhaps probably it shouldn't have happened at all. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? So wonderful, and I mean you've got some amazing painting there, and this is a great idea. I love this army, this Urukai army you've got here, the Scouts. I love your usage of Sharky rather than the sort of Saruman model.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice model. I suppose so. That could perhaps be quite a good example of me playing quite thematic army lists. In that I don't take Saruman on the horse, and kind of the theme behind that army is. So in the books, when the Free Hunters are on the edge of Fangorn, they see a hooded figure who's come to try and kind of he's come out to try and find his Uruks who he sent out to get Merry and Pippin. So Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, they see a hooded figure who we later find out was Saruman there, and so I wanted a hooded Saruman figure to have in my Uruk Scout army.
It's a lovely, lovely model. And I mean, I'm going to be painting a Sharky at some point this year because I've got 1,000 points of Ruffians to do. But it's really nice. It's a lovely model, so I can't wait to tackle that. You've also got a really clever idea for your Rangers army of having different coloured dice. I believe they link in with the flowers on the base. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's probably what I'm proudest of, actually. So yeah, that's Aragorn, Gandalf, and 12 Rangers there. They've all got a different coloured tuft on their base and correspondingly coloured dice as well. So it's much easier to keep track of, which one has spent might and which is rolling which dice and so on.
It makes a lot of sense. Nathan saying lovely lore-based army list. I'm assuming referring to the previous one because it's only just come up in time. This is your fellowship as well. Everyone's got a fellowship. I like your fellowships. Is this one that you had since the start? Because you said, oh no, these would be the metal ones rather than the plastic ones. I wondered whether you still own your original Minds of Moria kit from 2006, but maybe not.
I'm sure I've got bits of it somewhere, like in boxes hidden somewhere. I suspect most of it's kind of broken now as well. But this is a new set.
I mean, it is a lovely set as well. So glad to be able to see it. And what other ones we got left? Oh, we got some Wild Riders as well. A lovely set there. So that just gives you an idea that I suppose you're a modeler, a painter, and a gamer as well, which is interesting. Now, before we get into our sort of main topic, which is this what I'm calling the MESBG Moral Maze, let's just have a quick chat about. I don't know whether you're following the news at the moment, but it is exciting. Of course. So this weekend is a big weekend, particularly for someone with this name on the channel. So Entmoot is a big deal for me. So first of all, I'm going to just throw it out to everyone. How excited are you about the releases this weekend? And what are you most looking forward to? And so I'll ask you that question first, George. Are you picking up any of the models? Are you excited for anything in particular this weekend coming out?
I won't pick up any of these now, but it's just no. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I do. I've got plenty of stuff still waiting to be painted. I do try to be a bit more careful, but it does look really cool. I think the new plastic tree bid model, especially, is that one is really nice. And one day, I think I would love to do a Ent army.
I think this is going to be the time for me to do the Ent army. I'm actually unsure of whether I'm going to get Treebird himself. because I already have a tree beard and I do like my tree beard, but I definitely going to get Quick Beam, and I'm sure it's going to be really expensive, and I haven't got a picture of him. But either way, I'm really excited about that. So what is everyone else getting? Let us all know in the comments as well. Are you an Easterling fan, George, or are you sort of ambivalent to them?
Not a particularly big fan, I'm afraid.
No. Well, see, I am. I think I'm more excited about these than the trees, to be fair, because these just, I've already got most, well, I sort of lost steam. I was painting a whole Easterling army during sort of, I think it was probably March to April last year. And I was thinking they'd be my first army after lockdown. And then I slowed down painting them because I thought we had loads of time. And then we did have loads of time, but then I just kind of lost my impetus with them. And these guys look really cool. And I'm looking forward to having a go with them. So they're probably something I'm going to pick up this weekend. And actually, for people who are watching, who are supporting me on the Patreon thing, I'm actually going to do a prize draw to win some of them and the dice. So if you want to get involved in that, hit me up on that on the thing below. Everyone below, Nathan says, excited? No, I'm not excited because nobody is on my site. Very, very good reference to Treebeard's comments there, Nathan. Michael says, very excited, love the Ents. Nathan says he'll buy a Treebeard. Adam Simons is capitalizing his excitement over Easterlings. I think I'm really excited about the Easterlings. I think hopefully they'll give something more to the Easterling army that it doesn't already have. And I don't know about you. Have you played against Easterlings very much? Because they're not that common, I suppose, on the table.
No, not at all. I don't think I've ever played against them, actually. So...
Yeah, and I think because they do suffer with the sort of, it's basically just a lack of choice, isn't it? But having an extra model that's got an extra 2 attacks and, fight value 4, I really don't, everyone keeps saying that they're going to be strength 4. I really don't think they are. They're going to be strength 3, maybe poisoned or something, but I doubt that they'll be strength 4 because as beefy as those arms look, I can't see them being strength 4 myself, because then they'll be the same strength as a dwarf. And I mean, maybe, who knows? Or I'll be happy to be proven wrong this weekend when we get the little sort of, or next weekend, isn't it? When we get the little fold-up slips inside our packages when they arrive. So that's exciting. But yeah, what does everyone think about the new releases and which is number one? And also dice. I don't know whether you're a big dice collector, George. I'm certainly not, and I've never really been a dice fan. But everyone seems to go wild over the things.
I'm the same as you, actually. I'm quite happy with my normal dice. Actually, I have quite an emotional attachment to those 6 dots which you see on your dice when you roll a 6, and so I'm quite happy just to stick with that.
Yeah, fair enough. I do like having lots of cool different dice, because the more tournaments you go to, the more you sort of pick up these little odd ones, and I just slowly acquire these ones, but more as like tournament special dice rather than spending 15 quid on some dice that have flowers on the 6 or whatever. But I do like them. So my favorite one in particular just happens to be here. This is a school league dice. I once took part in the 40k school league, and I got one, and I treasure it. My team actually ended up winning. Wow. I wasn't in the final myself, but because I was taking an exam that day. But they all won for me, so it's fine.
I also have one of those dice, actually.
You see, everyone took part.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Everyone who took part got one, so I proudly keep it. It just happens to be on my desk because I've lost it for a while, despite proudly keeping it. Nathan says the dice are beautiful, but I'm not sure. New Easterlings are Gorulf's Runish cousins. Yeah, maybe they're related because they do have the same arms, don't they? And Adam Simon says, if you can paint the arms well enough, they're strength 4. Yeah, if you make those muscles look really buff, then maybe they're just right. But yeah, there you go. So those are the releases. And from what I gather, it's on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. that they get put up on the website. So cue about 5 minutes past 10. Lots of people getting angry about not having dice or whatever it is. I'm sure they'll have enough dice this time. But yeah. Oh, Nathan says, are we supposed to suggest our Entmoot dice are the best? They do roll pretty well. Yeah. If you've got Entmoot dice patrons, you've got subscribed, get Entmoot dice, and they do roll good sixes, I must say. The video I did from Bree was a good testament to that. Gaerton says, as usual, I'll get everything and they'll end up in the backlog. But seeing the new Treebeard painting guide, I'd really like to try it. Yes, I don't know whether you watched this, George, but I haven't quite yet watched it because I thought there's not much point watching it until I've got the model. But I have got it in the queue. But yeah, Warhammer TV supporting the hobby, which is great. I mean, that's a good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. Well, let's get stuck into this topic, because I know you've got a list of conundrums, and this is very much for everyone. If you're in the comments, you're commenting now about the news of the month, then please do get involved in this, because I'm intrigued at the everyone's opinions, really. So we touched on it earlier at the start about the kind of moral conundrum. So do you want to just revisit what the Facebook post that this has been inspired by was, and then we can have a chat about that, and then we can go into some of your new moral maze.
Sure. Yeah. So just quickly, I thought maybe I'll run through these three situations.
Sure.
In that post. Go through this quickly, and then I thought it'd be helpful just to talk about some ground rules, sort of.
Oh, yeah,
and then we can discuss them more fully.
Yeah, ground rules they control the fun, so that's good. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. So the first situation which I posed in this post was my opponent forgets to use his banner. Should I remind him that he can re-roll one of his dice? So that's the first one.
So what do people think? I mean, so yeah, have you got some ground rules before we get into this?
Well, I was just thinking I'll run through all three quickly.
All three of them. All right.
And then we can come back.
Yeah, you go through them all. Then, that's fine.
Okay, so that's the first one. So the second one, I'm playing the Riders of Theoden, the legendary force. Yeah. And then my opponent is moving, and he says out loud, "Gambling does not have any might left, therefore I don't need to worry about a heroic combat from him." Now, should I, which is right, Gambling doesn't have any might left. However, should I remind him that because of my legendary force, I have the death special rule. So once per game, I can do a heroic combat for free. So should I remind him of that when he said, Gambling doesn't have any might, I don't need to worry. And then the third situation, which I posed, so playing Sea Surprise, last turn. So my opponent's Durin has the prize. He's kind of just in my opponent's half, and he moves Durin to try and wound my own general to try and get some victory points from that. Now, should I remind him that based on the victory conditions of the Sea Surprise scenario, he's much better off moving Durin into my half of the board and getting more victory points?
Ooh, okay.
So those were the three situations which I posed. Now,
yeah, go on. Yeah, so you did have some ground rules you wanted to add to that,
yeah. Okay, so I think this is a discussion about sportsmanship and gamesmanship. I think it goes without saying, I think always be very friendly and very pleasant with your opponent. And we do very much agree with that. And I think, I don't know, there were some comments on that post about people, not wanting to be win at all cost players. I don't think this is about that. I don't think it's about. It's not about lying to your opponent or being dishonest to your opponent, which I think I'm sure we and everyone else would very much frown on. If your opponent asks you a question directly, always be honest, be forthcoming about them. But I think there's more of a grey area where it comes to should you remind your opponent about something which they haven't directly asked about.
Absolutely right. So let's get into that one first. Okay. So let's do this one.
One more thing worth mentioning as well.
Go on.
I think we're talking about playing against fairly experienced and competent players.
Yes. Okay. Good.
If you're playing against a very new or a beginner, I think be much more just generous with your I don't know, with your reminders and stuff with them. So
yeah, of course. If someone has never played before, then yeah, absolutely tell them all this stuff. But this is good. So let's do this one. So what I really want everyone's opinion here, because I want to get a discussion going in the comments, and I see a few people have already started. My opponent forgets to use his banner rolls. Should I remind him in a normal sort of let's say semi-competitive game? I don't want it to be like, if we're top tier tables, you might expect a different thing. But I think I'll say my answer first, because I think generally. I would remind people that they have banners generally, but maybe if it was like top table, you're playing against someone who is really hard to play, or this is like literally top table after a few games of the tournament, then there's kind of an expectation that they will. They will know stuff, and actually, there things like forgetting your banner. Maybe it's good, but I think I would always remind someone. Really, even in that top table situation, I think I'd just feel guilty if I didn't. So I'd want to not remind them, because I'd want to win. But then in the end, I don't think I would. So
yeah. So I think I very much agree with you there. I think. I generally always remind my opponent about a banner. I think everyone would really. I can't remember ever playing against someone who wouldn't take that approach to it. I mean, definitely, as you're saying, like if you're on a top table last game, it'd be very tempting not to. I don't know what I would do. But,
I think that's fair though. Nathan says he would said, "Are you using the banner?" So yeah, I think that makes sense. That's kind of the vibe I would go for, and I can't imagine many people saying anything. I guess it's not impossible for both people to forget, but I think most of the time that would be what happened. James says, "I'm too nice. I would remind them about the banner. Sometimes even let them re-roll a dice, because the dice gods will decide." In my opinion, yeah, exactly. Well, why not? And it's things like this with kind of cocked dice and stuff like that. I know that there's a lot of times when you sort of see a dice that could be cocked, but it's quite clearly, a 6 or whatever. And I don't like it when people say, "Go on, re-roll that." It's like, it's clearly a 6. It's clearly a 6. But, some people have that special rule. So that's fair enough. But like Michael says, "I missed his Facebook post, so looking forward to this segment." Oh, great. Helena says, "What do you call a pretty George?" Gorgeous. I
think I'd say a friend. It's
just Nathan's on the other two scenarios already. He's getting ahead of himself. We'll come back. James says, "Even if it's top table, karma will come round, and I may not beat them that day, but someday I may be top table, and someone will remind me, allowing me to win. I'm just too. It's cool, bro. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, I always think that if you don't beat someone, if you beat someone because you didn't tell them about a banner, or didn't tell them about a special rule, or didn't remind them of something, it wouldn't be a real win, would it? So, because you haven't conquered them using the proper rules, you've kind of been a bit gamey.
Yeah, I've got some opinions on that as well, but maybe we can come to that.
Okay, we'll come to that in a minute then. And Scott says, "Banner, I usually remind people they have banners all the time. It's my opinion that you should try to beat your opponent at their best rather than hope they forget something." Yeah, that's kind of what I was just saying, Scott. That's interesting. So, that's the comments on that one so far. So do you want to talk about the second one, or do you want to go into what you were saying there just now about, beat them at their best, etc.?
Well, let's finish with Lee's three, and then
cool.
Then we can talk about beating players at their best. Okay, so the second situation, as I said, you're playing Riders Theoden, and my opponent says, I think this is quite specific. So my opponent says, "Gambling does not have any might, so I don't need to worry about heroic combat from him." And that's a correct statement. Now, should I volunteer the information that because of the death special rule, Gambling could potentially still call a heroic combat that turn? Now, I think this is something worth emphasising as well. I think it's definitely a very grey issue, and I think it's very circumstantial. So when your opponent has phrased it like that, he hasn't asked a question, and I think that makes it a much more a much more grey area.
Mm.
Certainly, if your opponent had asked directly, can gambling call a correct combat this turn, then I think you need to be more forthcoming, more honest, say, yes, you can, because I got this death special rule. But if he hasn't asked about it, then...
Yeah, it's an because it's almost like you're overhearing them thinking out loud. And if they just thought that in their head, then you wouldn't obviously be able to say anything on it. But the fact that they have, I would always be like, oh. And I think Nathan said this up here. He said, remember, I have a special rule. And so maybe not explicitly saying it, but at least pointing it out that, that you've got the special rule. I don't know what I think on this one. I think, I think the problem that it comes on that if the player doesn't really know the Theoden's Legion special rule that well, then or maybe they're newer, maybe not completely fresh, but newer, and maybe you told them at the start, oh yeah, I've got a death rule or whatever, and then they're kind of, oh, what was that? And then people forget these sort of once per game special rules. So I think in this one I would also remind them, unless they were really annoying me or something like that, I think I'd probably still remind them.
I think that's true, but I think that's true. But I'd also say, I suppose this is sort of touching upon the issue of letting your opponents play at their best. I think with those legendary legions which have those once per game special rule, I personally think being a good tactical general is being aware of that and staying aware of that, because it is difficult to stay aware of this once per game thing, when's it going to happen, and being kind of on your toes about that. And so I think it's not necessarily just a rules issue. I think it is a tactical issue as well.
That's a good point, because I suppose, and this is why this topic is so fascinating, because there is definitely a grey line there, isn't there? Because there's a point at which you start deciding, well, it's kind of as an enemy, as an opponent in the game, it's almost on you to remember all the special rules that I'm going to have. So yes, you remind people at the start, this is how this, do you know how this works? Do you know all this? But then, once it's almost like saying to I don't know, Napoleon or whatever, and Wellington chiming in and say, oh yeah, well, you can see we've got 10,000 men, but we're sneaking these around here and they're going to stay there for half of the battle, and then if Napoleon forgets that they're there, then it's his fault. So it's kind of that vibe, isn't it? So this is go on.
I was going to say, I think I'm kind of showing my cards a bit here. I think based on what most people were saying in the comments on that post, I think I lean more towards the you don't have to remind your opponent side of things. I think most people who were commenting were saying that you should remind your opponent in situations like this. But I was also going to say, from my own perspective, trying to be the best general I can be, employ the best tactics I can. I mean, using that once per game, a big part of that is using that once per game special rule in the best situation which I can, and that means kind of exploiting my opponent who's put himself in a bad position, which necessarily means that he's forgotten something.
Exactly, yeah, and there's a line at which for example, someone makes a bad move, and then later on in the move phase they come to realise that that's a bad move. Would you let them move back once they've moved everything else? Maybe not, but if you're playing a beginner, maybe. But interesting point. Well, there's a few people who've commented since we last spoke. I think this blurs on the banners discussion. It's just updated. So about cock dice, just use a dice tray. I think dice trays are awkward for some terrain tables that especially at Warhammer World, for example, where you've got these hills and sliding down. Great if you've got a little bit at the side, but I totally agree if you can. Battle Camper, welcome along, Battle Camper. Nice to have you in. I'm very excited for your painting trees in the Ent. In the forest. Ents in the trees. That'd be great. Depends what kind of day they're having too. When I've taken a kicking, I'm always very grateful for those small acts of mercy. Yes, it's very true. Sportsmanship is important, says Jim. I've had people try to go back to redo something on a hero after moving 10 models since. By then, it's too late, surely. I think, we were just touching on that now, and I think, yes, it is. Once everything else has moved, it's tricky. Maybe if you've just moved it and then moved it straight back, but it's like chess. Once you've let go, it's done. Michael says, banner, yes, and probably regardless of my opponent. Maybe if my opponent if clearly a superior player had earlier not done something similar, i.e. set the tone. But even then, I think I'm with you, Michael, there. If you're playing against a really, really hard-nosed player who's already said to you, you're not, I'm not going to remind you of these things or whatever, or done something similarly mean, then maybe you might play it back. But I guess you set the tone at the start. So
I wouldn't say it's about being mean, but I definitely agree with his point about setting the tone for the game. And
maybe at the start, if you say I'm going to be a mean bastard throughout this, then everyone's fine with it, and we're all on the same table. Nathan says, I feel that there's a good reason I sit in the lower half of the table at various tournaments for every game I play. Fair enough. James says, I would disclose the rule only because if my opponent did ask it as a question, I would have to volunteer the info. It's like a discussion out loud with them and myself in the game, I guess. I think that's fair to an extent. Scenario 2, gambling. Probably if I knew the rule, I'd say, but again, see the caveat in my early response, how your opponent sets the tone. Yes. Scott says, I don't think you should tell your opponent about the Legion. But again, personally, I'd say something like, well, it is a legendary Legion with some rules, or I haven't used death yet. Fair enough. This is interesting. James says, you can't control what people think in their head, but you can control how you react to what they say out loud. You can't ignore it. Nathan saying, the history nerd in me is hurting. Is that my Napoleon and Wellington stuff? Painting trees in the end. Thanks, Frederick. Big brain moment. Cheers. Scott says, I think a lot depends on what you're looking to get out of the game / tournament. Playing to win, don't remind them. Playing for fun, remind them so they don't feel cheated and you both have fun. I guess if you're really trying to win, then maybe win at all costs. I don't know.
I don't think it is winning at all costs. I don't think. I mean, I understand the sentiment there, but I don't know. I don't think that not reminding them and playing for fun are necessarily exclusive there. I can see your point there. So just remind us of the third one before we get into some of these new ones. Okay, so the third one. Caesar prize last turn. So my opponent has Durin, and he's holding the prize, and he's near the centre of the board, but in my opponent's half. So if the game ends there, I think he gets three victory points for that, holding the prize in his own half. So then he picks up Durin, and he's moving him towards my own general to try and get a few victory points for killing or wounding. I think Caesar prize only get points for wounding. So for wounding my general. So potentially he's going to get one victory point there if he wins my general. Now, should I remind him, actually, this scenario, Caesar prize, you could instead move Durin with the prize into my board half, and then you're guaranteeing more victory points. You're going to get 5 victory points having it in my side half rather than 3 in yours.
So what do you do there? And I think this one is a bit, in my head, it's a bit more clear cut, because it's a decision. You're making a decision, and where it's not a rules based thing. I suppose it is to an extent. It's like, but I think this is where I would probably draw the line. I would say, you know what? No, probably not, because this is definitely the sort of thing I'd pull out at the end of the game and go, ha! Well, if you hadn't charged thingy, then you'd win. But I don't know what everyone else thinks on this one. But Durin has a prize in opponent's half. He moves in. But that's. What would you think on this one then?
No, I'd very much agree with you again. In my opinion, I think this is pretty clear. I don't think it's unsporting in any way to not remind your opponent there. However, looking on the comments on that post, in the GBHL post, I was very, very surprised actually that lots of people were saying that they would and that you should remind your opponent in that situation. So I don't know. Perhaps I'm in my minority there.
It's the sort of thing that I don't know whether I would explicitly say it, but it's the sort of thing that I'm often I often remind people in the later turns, oh yeah, well, this is, if we do this, then I'll get into that half, and if that happens. So I feel like this situation wouldn't come up in my games, but I think I would probably be inclined to say, well, yeah, it's your own fault. But I'd say just generally, oh yeah, okay, well, coming into the last turn, well, if you move here, and then you'll get those points, and if you move there, then yeah, so this is probably what's going to happen in this sort of situation. But
yeah, I suppose, just going back to what we were saying earlier about setting the tone as well. This is perhaps another good example of that. So this did actually happen to me in a game, and despite what I've just said, I did remind my opponent, but only because he had very early in the game, he had very kindly let me use a rule kind of out of the proper sequence, because I'd forgotten when to use that rule. So yeah, there you go. If your opponent does you a good turn, then maybe be nice back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, exactly. Set the tone. I think that's probably a good answer. I'm all for helping my opponent, but narratively, I'm a big fan of letting the red mist descend. This is the line for me. Yeah. So in that this one, you'd want the hero to go for the general, because that's thematically. Yeah. And to be fair, if for example, I definitely would change a little bit. If it was Gothmog, for example, who I was controlling, I would not move into the opponent's half, and I'd get the victory points. But if it was Aragorn, I'd go for the general, because that's what he would do. So that for me, there is definitely a thematic element there, which is it's a good point.
That's
there,
true. I hadn't even thought of that, actually. But
yeah, and if you are playing thematically, or maybe the tournament dictates that, or your list particularly dictates that, then fair enough. James says, I would only remind my mates in a friendly, and even then, your blatant actions in that case are your own to make. So there you go. I think reminding them of a rule in your army or a banner they forgot is slightly different to here's how you should tactically take your next step. Yeah, I suppose there's a subtle difference. Michael says, if we'd run through the VPs at the start of the game, maybe not, but would heavily depend on how the spirit of the game had gone up to that point, setting the tone again. Maybe in the unlikely case I was 12-0 and my opponent had a chance to reduce the deficit. Fair enough. Scott says the last scenario is more of a tactical discussion. Players also have access to the VP conditions at all times and should stay aware of it, whereas a banner and opponent's rules are easier to forget. Yeah, I suppose if you don't have all the documents lined out in front of you, but maybe you should be. I feel like you should, certainly in the last turns of the game, be aware of vaguely how you're going to win if you're in a semi-competitive instance. Just so people know, we are going to be talking painting later on. Ben is actually in the sort of waiting room while we discuss this at the moment. I can see him smiling in the waiting room. But yeah, we're just going to discuss some of this a bit more. So in about sort of 10 minutes time, we'll get on to painting, and people have seen the amazing photos of the Fellowship of the Ring, which I've been teasing us with throughout the thing, like this one. This is all the work of Ben. He's waiting in the waiting room. He's going to delve into his secrets later on. But first, George, you have more conundrums for us. So you've got some fresh ones which we haven't encountered yet. So what are the moral mazes have you got for the SBG world?
I do. I've got a few.
Okay.
I thought, first of all, actually, I might just so I mentioned already, but talking about letting your opponents sort of play at their best.
Yes.
So I think this was something which Scott brought up, and I think in that GBHL post, lots of people brought up similar points, saying that they want to win because of their better tactics or generalship, not because their opponent forgot something. And I've been thinking a lot about this and thinking about tactics in a strategy battle game, and I think that staying aware and remembering rules, I think, is kind of a fundamental part of tactics. I don't think you can separate the two. I think particularly with regards to movement, I think movement is kind of the biggest part of tactics in SPG. And kind of moving your own models is kind of the first layer of that. I think the second and the deeper layer is kind of being aware of where your opponent could move and moving your own models in anticipation of that. And obviously that being aware of where your opponents could move, that depends largely on you remembering rules, remembering heroic combats, magic, other special rules, where could they move. So I think remembering rules and tactics very much go hand in hand. I think, and when you say you want to beat your opponent because of better tactics, not because they forgot a rule, I don't think you can make that distinction personally.
And it's funny. There was, I don't know whether you're part of the competitive Facebook page. There was a similar sort of. There's a thread on there that said what are the single things that make the best player, and what do you need to know to be the best player? And my answer was. I don't know why I'm in this group, but my answer was a comprehensive knowledge of the rules of everything in the game. If you know all of the rules really well and can recall them very quickly, then you've just got a massive advantage because you know what's likely to happen, what things to look out for, and that just gives you an upper hand. So I guess that's that's this sort of situation, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think just plugging your own podcast.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah. So I was listening to your last episode, which was all about tactics, wasn't it?
Yes.
You had 5 top players on, and a recurring theme in that was being aware of what your opponent can do. And part of that is where can your opponents move, and and so I don't. Yeah, as I said, I don't like that distinction between rules and tactics.
It is really interesting. So what do people think? Is a knowledge of rules and remembering rules, is that a tactic? Is that, being a good player, or is that part of being a good sportsman, or having good sportsmanship for the game? While you're commenting on that, everyone, George, let's delve into this. Some of your conundrums. I know you've got a couple, so let's crack into them.
Yeah, so I've got 4 here, kind of, and they are they're all about movement, and kind of various, all kind of similar but different, slightly different. Okay. Okay, so the first one. So let's say my opponent has Lurtz, and he puts Lurtz 5 inches away from Glorfindel. And he says, Lurtz will be safe here. Glorfindel won't be able to reach him through the woodland terrain in between them.
Sure.
So, should I remind my opponent, well, actually, Glorfindel has a woodland creature, so he can move his full 6 inches, and therefore he can reach Lurtz.
Yeah, and this is similar to the death one, isn't it? Because this is a specific special rule that if you don't know about it, then that's I guess it's. I feel like this is because this is a more general rule, and it's less kind of buried in the eaves of a Legendary Legion rule. Then perhaps this one you might. I don't know, you might not do it, but then I don't know. It's just too complicated. This is why it's a moral maze. This is why it's difficult. What do people think? Should you remind people that Glorfindel is a woodland creature and therefore can smash Lurtz? What do you think, George?
Yeah, I think in that situation, I think you probably should remind your opponent. And I think it's difficult to put finger on why, but I think it's partly because it's a passive thing. It's like Glorfindel can just move there. It's not like he has to. I suppose with with that death special rule, I have to actively do something in order to do that heroic combat with gambling. Whereas in this case, I don't know, because it's a more passive thing. It would be like it's okay. It's a bit different way. It would be like if my opponent said, so I'm just trying to think of an example. So he puts, let's say he is Glorfindel. He puts Glorfindel 7 inches away from a cave drake. 7 inches away from cave drake. So the cave drake can't reach him.
Yeah.
Now cave drake, I'm pretty sure, has a 8-inch movement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So cave drake could actually reach Glorfindel there. And so I think. I don't know. I think so. This is kind of like that. And because
I suppose that's true. Yeah, and it's in a similar way. You would remind someone that your hobbits can only move 4, so you can actually stay up to 5 or so inches away, and that would be fine. Yeah, maybe. I think I don't know what I would do. I think I probably would say something. Well, would I? Depends. I don't know, because I strangely I kind of think maybe a bit different to you, because I think, well, Glorfindel is a woodland creature. I don't know. It's difficult. And what do people think?
Yeah, and again, it also it's very much depends on, I think, how your opponent phrases it as well, because your opponent could say nothing. Like I mean, you could see your opponent measuring 5 inches woodland terrain. I'm just putting that's there. I think you could just seeing that, you'd probably conclude pretty easily. Well, he thinks Lurtz is safe there. If he doesn't say anything, I don't know. Should you still say actually Glorfindel can reach him? I think, yeah.
It's tricky. Let's have a look. There's a few people saying so. There's actually someone's come up with their own in recon. Evening the Commander Kaiser, by the way. In recon, would you stop your opponent marching his army off the table, knowing you have more models, so will now just win? Yes, because if they go, then you can just carry on walking off. Happened in one of my games. Opponent didn't realise the game wouldn't end, and I hadn't picked up on it to warn him till he had only a handful of models left and couldn't do anything then to stop me. The rules question comes down to the difference between a game and war. Okay. Lurtz, Glorfindel, let them know. Otherwise, it's a gotcha moment, especially if they've made their intention and placements clear. Fair enough. Michael says, this segment is hard to paint to. Brain getting very engaged thinking about each of these moral conundrums and the ransacking the memory banks of personal experiences. Yes, fair enough. We'll have Ben to talk about painting in a few minutes' time, which should hopefully be more inspiring. Nathan, if a player moves and doesn't say anything, I wouldn't say I have bonus movement, but the declaration of intent affects things. Yeah. Jim says, Lurtz, Glorfindel, let them know. If you say nothing, then kind of go, aha, as you reach for him, then that's not cool. I suppose that's true. And Scott makes a good point. I think people not knowing the rules for your opponent's models isn't being more tactical. However, not seeing a heroic combat opportunity from your opponent that would win the game is tactical. So there's a subtle difference there. Yeah. So not knowing that someone moves 6 inches through woods is just a lapse in knowledge. But yeah, making a heroic move different. Although I would argue that if the top players are never going to forget the special rules, whereas people like me do, and I'm never on the top tables, or not for long if I am. Interesting. So let's tackle one more, because Ben's waiting in the wings, keen to show off his painting, and then we'll move on to that if that's all right, George.
Okay.
It's a big finale, big moral maze finale.
I got 3 here. Okay, so let's use this one here. So,
well, actually, I can see Ben in the wing, so I might just get him in on once we started this. Nod your head, Ben, if you fancy joining in and discussing the moral maze. George, he sounds like he looks like he's a painter, maybe. Oh, we'll get him in a second after George. You've done this one.
Okay. So let's say my opponent moves his cave troll 7 inches away from Celeborn. And he says he's out of charge range, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's 7 inches, Celeborn's only got 6 inch movement. Should I remind my opponent that my Wood Elf Sentinel could potentially use his enchanting song to draw a cave troll closer, and then Celeborn could charge him?
Yeah. No, I don't think
that,
so.
okay.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear, actually. Maybe I'm wrong. Because that's not forgetting. It's not. Yeah, I don't know why it's different, but it just definitely is. Because I think that's a tactical, that it's a decision that you're making. I think you need to be aware that decision is happening. But if you say, move the cave troll 7 inches away, and then say, and there's no way that you can bring him closer, and then you say nothing, that would be different.
Okay. What if your opponent, so instead of saying the cave troll is out of charge range, right? What if instead your opponent said Celeborn can't reach the cave troll this turn, right?
I suppose I suppose I would probably answer that and say, well, not in a not without doing something else, or not in a normal move. Or you could say yes. Or you could just say, I'm 6 inches away or something. I don't know. Or I move 6 or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting one because this is again it's the grey area, isn't it? So
that is a specific rule in your army which your opponent is forgetting about here. So based on what some people have been saying in the comments and in that GBHL post, I think lots of people would say that you should remind your opponent of your own model's rules. However, I don't know. You're right. I agree. I think this case it feels differently, even if you can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Oh, this is tricky. I think the people are commenting on this one as well. So I think the one argument people are making is not wanting to win from the enemy's mistakes. On the converse, I wouldn't want to have won by my opponent correcting my mistake. I'd feel like I didn't earn it. That's a really good point, Rowan. Yeah, because if you're on the other end and someone reminds you that you've got something wrong, and you win because of it, you feel like again you haven't earned it because actually you'd have forgotten it and they're just being nice. That's what gets you favorite game votes and sportsmanship votes. I think is doing that sort of stuff on the other end of it.
I'll just say as well. So Rowan is a good friend of mine, and those initial 3 scenarios which I mentioned, they all came from games against Rowan.
Well, there you go. Well, glad you've sparked this conversation, Rowan. Michael says, "Don't get me wrong, this is a really interesting segment. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Great, I'm glad to hear it." And George is really interesting coming up with these things for us. James says it's a really deep segment. Yeah. Adam says no to that last one. So yeah, fair enough. I agree. Just getting through painting Gotham. I'll keep it a great discussion, gents. Nathan says a much finer line on that one. I feel like rules combinations are different to just having rules to do so. Again, declaration of intent is vital. Would it be cool to answer yes, he can, but not explain how? Yeah, I suppose.
I mean, I know people have said that. They said like, yeah, you could be mysterious about it. Like, I'm not sure.
I don't think that really achieves a great deal because if you say yes, I can charge, and then you go, and then the opponent goes, what? No, you can't. I'm 7 inches away, and then you go, all right, and then it still feels like a maybe, I don't know, but I think most of the time you are just basically saying yeah, but my centre in it, and then they will notice. But Adam says Jasmine mentioned something like this in the last Entmoot, yes, with the Balrog hurling into the Marauder and hence going back above 25%. Yeah, and I think Jasmine sort of did that I think that was more of a clever thing because I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's the same sort of thing because you can hurl your own into some Marauder, but I don't think they could do anything to stop it. And it wasn't like a gotcha moment. It is just something. By the end of the turn, I might have more models. So interesting. Kellerborn, Cape Troll. If you'd run through your army at the beginning and they'd forgotten and were not a newbie, maybe stat. Stay dumb, but Michael, great, thank you. Maybe at the start of the game, decide if you're going to let each other know about rules. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. If you say at the start, do you want me to remind you of stuff? And I hope that you'll remind me of the same in return. You could make a sort of agreement, but there you go. Maybe it's just me. I would tell them he has the option to cast magic and get the extra movement. Yeah, fair enough. So Scott's well on the side of being a good person. And Scott, I know that that's you, so that's brilliant. Now, I know you've got more of these questions, but I promised Ben that we would talk about his models. So he's waiting in the wing, so I'll let him join in now because I don't want to waste his evening sitting watching this amazing stuff, even though that's what lots of us are doing. So Ben, welcome to the stream. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How is everyone?
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on in, George, Ben. It's a pleasure to have you both on the stream. I don't know whether you've been listening to The Moral Maze. Are you much of a gamer?
No, I'm very limited on my gaming knowledge, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I probably had a grand total of about 15 match play games and about 8 games of Battle Companies. So, yes, I feel a bit like the kid in the corner in a dunce hat at the moment.
But what would you say would you come down on? Would you come down on the side of generally being a nice person and helping your opponent, or going, you know what, this is a game, this is a hard-nosed game, let's play it properly, let's not remind each other and let's do it,
I think whenever I've had games, I try and remind my opponent if I think they've missed something. The chances are, if they've missed it, I've also missed it. I mean, there are the occasional times where I have noticed something, and And I mean, one thing I'm very bad at, and I'll say at the start of the game, is when declaring strikes on the mount or the rider. Get a rush of blood to the head and just throw the dice again. So I always say at the start of the game, you know, if I do that, you get to choose where I allocate, where the strikes are allocated. And
you know what? I think
you like.
Yeah, I actually think that's probably more annoying than some of these things to me. George might tactically, a lot of the conundrums that you've brought up have been quite on the fence. Whereas for me, I think if someone starts rolling dice and then says, "Oh yeah, well I'd go for the horse or whatever," and you're like, "Hold on a second, you didn't say," and then suddenly I'm like, because that's the sort of stuff that I do get a little annoyed by. But again, it's just being nice, isn't it? It's just going, you know what, it's fine, don't worry. I can understand that everyone gets a bit eager at times, but I do always remind people when that sort of thing's happening. It's like, oh, what are you going for, the rider or the? Oh, you've already rolled this 5. That's the most annoying number to roll in this situation. That sort of but brilliant. Either way, that's really interesting, George. And I know it's set the community ablaze on the Facebook page. And I don't know whether people have seen this, but if you search in the Great British Hobbit League Facebook page for George Harold with the double R, there's a whole long discussion, as you said earlier, George, 111 comments, and the analysis. I'm an admin on the page, so I get to see some of the data, and it shows that 3,500 people have seen that, which is impressive because and it was one of the most engaged with posts on the Facebook page throughout February and early March. So that says a lot, and it says it's interesting because I think that it comes to the root of what it is to be a good gamer, whether you want to be sporting, whether you want to be tactical. I'm intrigued as to what the debate would have been like if you'd posted it in the competitive page as well, because it might have been different. Might not have been a debate at all. But either way, George, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We're gonna. I'd love you to stay along for a bit longer, just to play this game that I do before we get talking about painting. Ben is hopefully able to play this game as well. This is something I do every week, or every month. I say when I play this, and it's something that a lot of people, in some ways, this is what I have decided I'm going to name Factor. Essentially, what I'll do is I'll play a short clip from the films, and I will ask you some questions about it, and they're usually irritating. You see, I've named it. What do your elf eyes see? I've finally come up with something. So everyone, if you keep your eyes peeled, we're going to get play a clip from the movies, and you have to be able to get these right. And if you do get them right, that's the game. Are you okay with that, Ben and George?
Yeah.
Absolutely fab. Right, okay, everyone, if you're ready, let's play the clip. So watch this very carefully, and I will ask you two questions afterwards, and then we will talk about painting.
Women and children, get them into the caves. Saruman's arm will have grown long indeed if he thinks he can reach us here.
Helm's Deep has one weakness. Its outer wall is solid rock, but for a small culvert at its base, which is little more than a drain. How can fire undo stone? What kind of device could bring down the wall?
If the wall is breached, Helm's Deep will fall.
Even if it is breached, it would take a number beyond reckoning, thousands, to storm the keep.
Tens of thousands.
But, my lord, there is no such force.
And there it is. That's the clip. Oh, what a great moment that is when the candle blows out. So I have the two questions, which obviously I know what to look for. So, first one, there. So everyone, feel free to put your answers in the comments. The first question is, what is the lady on the far right of the Helm's Deep doest bit you see? So you see the camera pan into the drain. What is the lady on the right doing? This is there's two potential answers, but there's one that's particularly amusing, which I thought. So, guys, have a think. Did you know? Were you paying attention that the stream is buffering? I don't know whether that's an issue here. Let's just pause it a sec. I'm on. My Ethernet's on, and it's going very quickly, so it should be fine. I'll just turn off my other stuff.
I'm good.
The clip was
okay.
fine.
Okay, well, apologies, everyone. I don't know whether people can hear me now, but there might have been some issues there. Rowan is answering some questions. Okay, so sorry about that, Frederick, and other people, if try refreshing, I don't know. But anyway, some people are knowing... some people are coming up to think, what was the lady doing on the right? Did you notice? Were you paying attention closely enough?
I was more focused on trying to count the people coming down the stairs there. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say drinking or eating something.
Oh, what did you think, Ben? Did you notice?
I thought I saw her pick up something, possibly a child.
Yes, that is one of the correct answers. Well done. You get some end draft. Hold on. There we go. Yep. Don't drink it all at once. Now the next one, the second answer, which is my favourite one, is what James Greenslade and Rowan has said: washing clothes. Yes, in that dirty, dirty water. There is a lady. I'll just quickly play the start of this because I find this amazing that Peter Jackson has allowed.
Children, get them into the caves.
Check this out. This is insaneness. I'll just
Arm will have grown long
I'll get rid of that comment.
He can reach us here.
So watch out for the lady on the right. Look at her. What's she that for? Look at it. Insanity. Absolute insanity. It just shows when you scrutinise these films, you think, what on earth were they thinking in the filming process? But I can't help but wonder whether Peter Jackson just... The question I had was my traditional counting question, which is how many candles...
I thought there are too many candles there to count.
Well, I don't think there are that many candles. How many candles, roughly, do you think there are in that bit? What do you think? Ben and George?
There's at least one, which weren't holding.
Yeah, and even that's 0 by the end because it's blown out.
I think I counted about 6 in that first scene in All Thank. But I was it throughout the whole clip.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the whole clip. So not just the start.
Yeah.
When he pans out, there you can see more candles. How many do you think there are?
I think there's maybe like 6 on that one sort of set on the right of the screen, but then you see more coming from the left. So
I did count them. I screenshotted this. Oh, look at this. Rowan also counted the candles and have since forgotten. I think there were 5 in the thing on the right, and then the one that Grimmer had. Yes, but there were others. Okay. So once he turns round, I'll just get it back on.
Children, get them into the caves.
I can't unmute you guys, I'm afraid. So because you've chosen to mute yourselves apparently. But if you can unmute yourselves, I don't know how. But we'll be able to chat it. But basically, you see the candles to the right of Saruman as he comes out. Ex-Smokey says 6, I think.
I'll say 9. 9.
Okay, 9. Fair enough. Ben, have you got a advance on that? So there's 5 there. You want to go with 6. There's 6 there. There's 7, 8, 9 to the left, and 10, 11 so far. And then I think once you spin round, you can see another bracket, which makes, if you spin round, here we go. Look, there's another one there in the distance. So it's somewhere around 18. That's what I got anyway. Either way, that is what I'm calling. Lots of stuff, lots of candles. Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that little play along segment. George, thank you very much for coming along. I really appreciated your time. I shall say goodbye because we want to talk about Ben's amazing painting work and hopefully let people relax and paint for a bit rather than thinking desperately about conundrums. But I really appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you. It's this is the first time I've done anything like this. I was a bit nervous beforehand, but it's been really, really, really great. I've really enjoyed doing it, and yeah, I think we've taken up a bit more time than planned. So sorry.
Oh, no, it's really interesting stuff.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's a good sign. If
Good.
Ben didn't
Yeah.
mind, and he was told that he's going to be in sort of 20 minutes ago, then that's a good sign. Right, George, I'll kick you out now. So cheerio. So there he goes. Off George goes. So Ben, welcome to the stick. We haven't really introduced ourselves. I don't really know who you are. I've never met you, but I know your amazing painting was what sort of attracted me to getting you on the stream tonight. And maybe I was a bit ambitious getting two people on, because I think George prepared loads of different bits and bobs for us to talk about, so I didn't want to well, I was stuck in the discussion. But Ben, first of all, welcome to Entmoot Live. Tell me about yourself. Where have you come from in terms of the hobby? Like, are you a painter? Did you go back way when the Battle Games and Middle Earth magazines were coming out? Tell me all about your hobby history.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, you might have guessed I'm primarily a painter. I don't really know much about the tactical aspect of the game. I mean, I suppose my first foray into the hobby was kind of back in 1995 when I first kind of went to high school. Kind of first introduced to it there. First purchase was probably a box of the monoposed High Elf Spearman. I think fourth edition of Warhammer.
Oh right, yeah.
And you know, coincidentally, it's probably about the same time that I kind of started to read Tolkien's works, and I used to always imagine the Warhammer models, which ones I could use to represent which characters from the books. Kind of sometime later, I kind of gravitated away from the hobby as I got a bit older.
As we all do, yeah. A little bit.
Other interests started to
get
take
too cool for it.
Yeah. Then kind of while I was at uni, kind of probably just after the Two Towers was released, I happened to be walking past a GW store and obviously saw that they'd actually released a game for the Lord of the Rings movies. And again, I had a tentative kind of dip your toe in moment and kind of purchased a few boxes and this and that and had a go at painting. But yeah, then kind of once I graduated, it kind of went under my bed where it sat pretty much until, 2017, 18.
So when the next edition came out again? Or just
I think slightly before. So I think it was probably 2017. So I think it was a year before. I mean, my parents had decided they wanted to expunge all memory of me and my brother from every.
I remember those days for my mum.
I got a call saying, "Yeah, we've got to skip, and if you don't come and sort through your stuff, it's going in there." So went and retrieved, a box of old half dried up paints and things like that. And I mean, it's about the time I kind of stopped playing sport. So I stopped playing kind of rugby and football. I was kind of had a few reoccurring injuries. So I had a bit more time on my hands than I had done in previous years. So I just kind of dug out the old paints and paintbrushes and, started painting a few things really.
And then 2 to 3 years later, you've got some amazing progression. I mean, were you a great painter when you started as a sort of a teenager at the Two Towers days, or were you already sort of good by then?
Probably not really. No, I think I've kind of gone a bit head first into it since kind of finding out these old models and things, kind of done a lot of research that I wouldn't have done previously. So I mean, to be honest, I was looking for painting videos on YouTube and for Lord of the Rings figures, and kind of, and there's a whole wealth of kind of all kinds of things about kind of painting techniques that just weren't available in the past. I mean, I'd heard of things like wet blending from White Dwarf and things like that back in the day, but there wasn't a kind of video demonstration that was readily available to show you kind of how to do it. So, and one thing as well, kind of while searching for these, the autoplay function on YouTube took me to a kind of Great British Hobbit League bat rep, which kind of was very easy viewing, which piqued my interest about the kind of gaming side of things. So I mean, I have attended a few tournaments. The first game I played was at the Battle Companies event in 2018.
Oh yeah, the one at Warhammer World, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it was a great weekend. Somehow managed to put together a barnstorming run that led to me being on the top table for the final 6-player game of the weekend. Though that would probably put down to lucky reinforcement rolls and death rolls, and be a bit of a false dawn for my tournament win-loss ratio. And kind of after following that, I kind of joined Team Middle-earth, which is the kind of local Lord of the Rings based group near me. They were running kind of new player games and things. Got into that, attended a local tournament run by them, and then at the end of 2019 attended Throne of Skulls.
Amazing. So and that's the progression. That's fantastic as well, to just see it all sort of piece together and show that. I mean, you it sounds like you've kind of slipped down the rabbit hole in the way that so many of us do, by just sort of tentatively putting your toe in and then slipping in via videos and things like that. But it was interesting you mentioned these techniques, and this is what the painting techniques about wet blending and stuff. This is what I wanted to speak to you about generally, because in your little post where you posted these amazing Fellowship of the Ring models, and they are absolutely glorious, and I think everyone will agree with that. But you posted this kind of really interesting analysis that showed that you thought you don't think about it more than other excellent painters do, but there was certainly some kind of insight that I was keen to delve deeper into. So you said something about shades and warm highlights, or warm low lights and shadows, and cold highlights. Now, I just want to kind of delve into what exactly you mean by that, and how you go about achieving this kind of really crisp, really beautiful painting style, I guess.
So I suppose the idea behind it, I mean, generally certainly on the Hobbits, it's not on I haven't used it on every one of those, but generally I tend to use, I mix my base color really, and then kind of highlight incrementally by adding in generally probably just one or two other colors to the mix. And the idea behind kind of the shift from kind of cold shadows to warm highlights, generally you're shifting it by introducing yellow to the tone. And I think it just adds kind of more visual interest. It kind of increases the contrast between your shadows and your highlights.
So in this model we're looking at here, so I'd really like to know the recipe almost. So we've got Merry, and let's say we go with these trousers, because they're sort of brown trousers, but they do sort of warm up to a kind of a very, very extreme white highlight on sort of on some of the folds. But whenever I were to try and do something like that, it would just look white. So is that the yellow there that you're mixing in? And then is it wet blended? Is it highlighted? Is it a line? And how do you go about getting that effect, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, really it's just layered mostly on there. Basically I started with a mix of kind of just a mid-tone brown and a bit of black, to kind of darken it down, desaturate it slightly, and then just added in I'd probably call it a kind of yellowy orange skin tone. It kind of almost like it's not peach really. It's kind
what colours do you mix to get it?
Sorry, I'm just that
I'll get rid of the picture.
Colour.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so it's like it is almost peachy, isn't it? It's like almost like the colour that my mum painted my walls after I was kicked out of my room and cleared out my stuff.
It's pink. And that pretty much for the Hobbits, every one of those was just highlighted up by incrementally adding in that.
So is that from say a base coat of what, scorched brown or Rhinox hide or whatever it is?
Yeah, it's probably similar to a scorched brown, I think. I haven't used GW paints for a while just because I tend to use a wet palette now, so I just find getting the paint out of doing the paint onto that. I find it easy with droppers. There are some tones I really love, like Bugman's Glow. That's a great one. Scream of Pink, which I haven't really managed to find a tone that matches that in any dropper bottle ranges. And Dryad Bark's quite a nice one, I think.
Yeah, I like Dryad Bark. It's dark brown. Really nice brown. But yeah, that's...
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of the Hobbits, possibly bar Frodo, have all been highlighted with this. The one exception was kind of Pippin's cloak, which probably went from a kind of purpley red, adding in kind of just pure red initially, and then the final highlights adding in the in this fella.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So is that highlight too, rather than, in the way that I would and many sort of beginner painters would, is getting, starting with a dark blue, then getting a light blue, and then doing all those different layers. You basically just add to that base coat layer and keep mixing it up until you've got something that's resembling what we're seeing now.
Yeah, pretty much. And I might kind of go back in. I mean, with a wet palette, you kind of keeping your paint kind of workable for a fairly long time. So I might go in and to one corner of and just add in a bit more kind of a bluey black kind of color, just to take the just to kind of get a darker tone again, and then kind of run a thin layer of that kind of over transitions just to smooth those.
Oh, right. So, and that's what we hit when we're talking about wet blending. So say you've got that white, if we're looking directly at Pippin's jacket, on the right-hand side of his jacket, there's like a white line there, isn't there? Is that what you're doing there in the line between that? There's kind of almost like a border, I suppose. I'm trying to do this, but I'm pointing with my mouse, which is completely stupid. But there's like almost a very, very faint white line, and then there's a little black border, and then you go back to the sort of lighter blue again. Is that kind of what you're talking about, or am I imagining that?
Yeah, I mean that was his kind of overcoat was all done with layering rather than blending. Really, I kind of would go. I mean, basically on my wet palette, I kind of have the base tone, and then I drag a bit out and mix a bit of the highlight color in, then drag a bit of that highlight color out and mix some more of the highlight in. So I've kind of by the end of it, I've kind of got all the tones I've used. So if ever I need to kind of go back in, and if I think a highlight's too stark, I can go back one, possibly water it down, just run it over this transition line. It kind of merges them together.
That's really interesting. So with wet blending, or with this kind of highlighting, I'm one of those people that I've never gone into wet palettes. I've never felt I needed them. I mean, I'm not an amazing painter. I'm a decent painter, but I've never ever used wet palettes. Would you say that to be able to get to the standard that you're clearly working at, are those a necessity, or would you be able to do it without, I guess?
I think I would struggle to get the kind of control and the translucency of the layers without working with paint that was thinner than how it comes out of the pot or drop.
I mean, I use a palette. I use a normal palette, not a water palette. I just sort of paint it on a little plastic palette, and I can put a little bit of water in there so I can thin it down and stuff. I mean, but it sounds like, from what you're suggesting, just having that wet palette of numerous layers of blending helps everything, and that it might be more difficult if you didn't have it.
I would find it very difficult. Yeah. And certainly things like, I mean, I haven't wet blended a whole lot on these. I think Gandalf's hat was initially wet blended between a kind of dark and light blue, and Boromir's shield.
I can't see it.
Yeah, can't see that.
Oh yeah, it's on the back, isn't it? There he is. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's very clearly.
But that, and I suppose the kind of the non-metallic swords, or not really non-metallic metals.
Wow.
On those.
And people are starting to
non-metallic.
Yeah, I'll definitely want to talk about non-metallic metals in a second. People are starting to ask questions. Absolutely, fire questions at Ben. This is amazing stuff that we're looking at, and it's very inspirational. It's always great to get these tips. I'm just picking Ben's brains as for my own personal point at the moment. James says, "How do you get such neat wet blending? For me, it usually comes out stippled and inconsistent. Any tips?"
Yeah, you need to give yourself a chance, really. I kind of either go for mixing some glazed medium, something like a Larman medium, maybe 2/3 paint to 1/3 Larmium medium. So it's kind of quite thin. It just keeps the pet, because what I find out of the pot, if you apply a thin layer straight out of the pot, it immediately goes kind of tacky. And if it does that and you try and work the paint, then it just tears. So you need to have something that you kind of it's workable for longer. So if it's wet, it will stay kind of. And it doesn't really matter if it pulls, because you're going to be working that paint around anyway. So I start on my palette with kind of the two tones I want to blend, kind of mixing the consistency I need them, and kind of very broadly. I mean, that's a size 6 brush.
Okay.
So it's probably bigger than you'd expect, and kind of just work it round with that until I've got a rough kind of blended gradient, really. And then once I've got that, leave it to dry, and then kind of add in a couple of highlights here and there.
So are you suggesting with was it James? His stippling or inconsistent is because there's not enough water in the paint, or not enough Larmium in the paint?
Could potentially be an issue. Yeah, I mean, I did try and demonstrate blending without actually having any water on the table the other day, and I found that what happened was, when I tried to move the paint around after, it just kind of took it off rather than moved it, because it had kind of gone this tacky, so it kind of attaches to the brush and then just tears off as you move the brush.
Interesting.
It sounds like it could be that.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's Ben's analysis, and judging from his models, James, maybe that's the best idea. Adam says, "Gorgeous models, Ben. Great tips. Thank you." Nathan says, "Very crisp job on the fellowship." Yes, it really is. It's gorgeous. Michael says, "Wet palette has really helped me take a step forward in my painting, but still learning how best to use it." This is something I wanted to know, because I have, and Nathan actually saying, I've tried a wet palette once, didn't see any benefit versus normal palette. Any tips? I'm the same, and I've sort of had to go with, to be fair, not proper ones. I've done those ones where they say make it on the internet and you put a sponge down and stuff.
Yeah, I mean that was my first one. Yeah,
and
Tupperware and a sponge.
Yeah, and I just thought, well, this is fine, but maybe I'm just old fashioned, but I'm a bit lazy, and I think I just get used to putting the paint on the thing and then, letting it slowly dry and then adding water to it. I don't know whether it's just a habit thing for me, but how do you get the best out of a wet palette, and what benefits does it bring?
Yeah, there is a learning curve to it. If you're used to perhaps using not quite so thin paint, it's learning the consistency that's kind of easy to paint with. I've heard it described as like skimmed milk or milk and things, and that's kind of consistency you're aiming for. And yeah, when I first started using one, I over thin the paint and it would just all separate out and just be a mess that you couldn't paint with. But kind of, I suppose it's like anything with it. Eventually you find that sweet spot, and it does allow you better I think it allows me better control. Because if you're using such small brushes, what can happen is, in the very tip, it kind of dry quite quickly, which will cause a block. So you have to press harder. Whereas if it's thinner, it stays hydrated longer, and it kind of acts as a bit like a fountain pen. and you really only need a light touch to be able to get a kind of controlled line, as opposed to sometimes quite heavy.
That's really interesting. That is really interesting. Yeah, because I definitely find that, particularly when I'm dotting I's, which I've take, you sort of line up the model and you're doing all this and you're holding, you're propping things up, and then you do it, and then I dot it and I go, oh, bloody hell, it's dried, and then I have to get some more paint on. That happens to me all the time. So that's interesting. That and I guess I suppose it does. It sort of pulls the water, the moisture out a bit better if it's doing it that way. That's intriguing. What was I going to ask? I was going to ask. It's probably slightly off topic from the wet palette discussion, but we'll come back to that. What colours do you undercoat in? Because I've always undercoated black, or I've enjoyed undercoating in black more. Do you have a specific thing? And does the sort of wet palette painting make a difference for that? Because I've recently tried some a contrast paint, the white contrast paint. So I undercoated everything white and then did a grey on it, and then painting over white, having a more moist, sort of more watered down paint doesn't seem to matter as much. Does that make a difference? And which colour do you choose?
I both.
Okay. So there's no silver bullet to telling me which one to.
I don't know. I've chosen this guy because it shows up better. He's not a.
Oh yeah, that way. That's it. That's looking good.
So if I turn him that way, he looks white.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can get.
Oh yeah. So he's black that way.
So I kind of spray him black, kind of black all over, and then from a 30-degree angle, just give him a halo of white, and it kind of picks out. I suppose it's pre-shading, really. And
this is something they call a zenithal highlight, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, or pre-shading, anything like that. And I mean, I'm planning to do normal layers on this one, but this one, I'm planning to kind of try out some contrast paints and just see what contrast is on over that. See, because you've already got a bit of a light gradient, and obviously the contrast paints will pull into the recesses and leave the kind of surfaces light, and see how that works.
That's really interesting, and that actually feels like something that I could do with my next models, and it might make a really big difference.
You can do that. It's certainly to speed, because if you can do it, if you got two spray cans, a black and a white. You can try that, and with water, kind of thin paints, if you paint over that, the white will show through and it'll form a translucent layer over both paints, and it'll leave you with a natural kind of color gradient.
Wow.
Which and then from there, it's you can add a wash to certain areas to kind of further give you more contrast where you want it, and maybe a selective wash, or pick out some edge highlights as well.
I suppose it's just giving you it's almost like a step ladder. It starts off giving you a leg up to get you started. You've already got some of those highlights, and I suppose it shows you where you can highlight as well. If you know that this bit is caught the white, then that's exactly where you need to highlight later on, I suppose.
Or if you, I'm planning to paint that in kind of normal layers. So what I'll probably do is I'll take a couple of photos just to let me know where the light falls, basically, so I know where I'm going to sketch in my highlights and things like that.
Brilliant. How long does it take you to do an individual model? So I mean, talking about that fellowship there, these are obviously heroes, aren't they? This is a big deal.
I mean, they tended to take me about a week for anything but a Hobbit. I reckon I probably on average paint about 8 hours a week. So I'd probably out 8 hours for a Boromir, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Gandalf.
So that feels pretty fast for me. I mean, I do a model in maybe 4 hours worth, usually in one sitting. To be fair, I'll do a big sitting and I'll paint either 1 or 2 or maybe 3 models at a time, depending on what I'm painting, of course. But 8 hours seems incredibly fast for for the standard that you're doing and the techniques you're using as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of them. Aragorn probably took me the longest because I painted Legolas and Gimli, and kind of everything had gone really to plan. I was really excited about Aragorn because all the folds on the sleeves of the cloaks, and I thought, you know, I'm really quite getting this, and then my hubris came back to bite me. I repainted that overcoat about 3 times.
Oh, really?
I had to just put it down in the end, go paint something else and come back to it because I just really wasn't getting anywhere with it. Which actually is quite a bit of a top tip. If you're struggling with something, put it to one side, and you know, paint something else for a bit. I don't know whether it just gets confidence back up or what, and return to it later and give it another shot.
That is a good shout. Although if I ever leave a model half done, it will just never ever get finished because I'm always more interested about what I'm doing now. But that is it. It is a good idea, especially if you're feeling frustrated. But I'm particularly impressed with the Aragorn because I don't really rate Aragorn sculpts generally because I don't think they look much like Viggo Mortensen, and this is no exception. But I do think you've done an amazing job picking out some of the details there, and the face is gorgeous. The ring, I didn't even know that there was a patch on his right sleeve. I don't know whether I've painted this model yet, so I'm hoping I haven't painted it because I'd never noticed that patch. But it just shows when you really put some effort in, you can pick out all those details.
Yeah, thanks. I think the tip to get it to look a bit more like Viggo Mortensen is probably not go full beard with it. I mean, if you see, I've kind of painted in a bit of a kind of more of a goatee. So, you know, here you've kind of still got skin tones, whereas I think on the official GW one, I think it was quite a full beard.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of stubbly, really, isn't he? And stubble's such a hard thing to achieve. You start sort of a wash kind of thing, or maybe stipple dots, but then the dots.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is when the kind of it's real scale as well. Like Lord of the Rings. I mean, I didn't know. I just painted lines.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it. And Nathan says, how important is muscle memory and repetition in your repertoire?
It probably does help. I mean, I'm quite lucky that I've got steady hands. I mean, I'm not artistically minded particularly. I struggle conceptualizing where I'm going. Kind of when I'm highlighting all kind of the mid-tones, I really have no idea how what I'm doing then how that will represent when I'm finished. It's kind of a bit. I rely a bit on luck, I think, with regards to I've got better, and my understanding of that kind of thing is getting better. I mean, I was saying about I think I've got quite steady hands, but I also kind of try and keep my posture quite good. So I lock my elbows onto the table, so that kind of reduces any shaking it, and use a painting handle. Because that obviously you don't want to cramp up. And I kind of lock my wrists together, so I'm moving quite small movements like that. So it's kind of really quite tiny movements.
You know,
I
think that you mentioned the posture there. I think posture is one of those things I've noticed. I've been working for ages on a tiny little sort of fold-up TV desk, like a TV dinner desk, basically. And it's like this big, and I've had my box on it, and it's not very big, and I couldn't really lean, and I've got awful back anyway. But I found I've just got a new desk, and the difference it's made just being able to, you know, prop up there like that and have my model and hold it in my hand and then have the painting handle, and it makes so much difference. And these sorts of things that I've done some amazing work. I say amazing. I'm really proud of it. I'll just show you because I'm big headed. These are my Hunter Orcs that I did not so long ago. I started on the Battle Streams of Middle Earth a few weeks ago, and I was enjoying doing them so much that I did all the face paint, and I found it quite easy to do. yeah, I'm quite happy with them. I mean, they look like crap compared with what your techniques are, but I'm quite proud of them. But that posture I think has really helped. And some people I've seen people curl over like the desk and the coffee table and things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
those are things that are important.
I can be really bad for it. I can kind of forget and kind of end up down kind of here on my knees.
Yeah,
not good, because after about half an hour, it just starts killing you back.
Yes, Nathan makes a good point. Of all the good advice you could give a war gamer, and you suggest good posture. What next? Shave our necks. Yes, indeed. Well, it is true though. A posture. If you can try and if you think about it, I think that will help. Because I know what people are like, and I'm as you say, Ben. I'm the same. Eventually, you curl over, but just being aware, and even I remember reading I think it was the How to Paint Citadel Miniatures book that they released in the late 90s, and it said something like, go and get a cup of tea every 2 hours, which is great because you get a cup of tea out of it, but also you stretch your back, you move your legs, and everything else helps with it. So I've always remembered that, even though I completely ignore that advice almost all the time. James is saying elbows on table and locked wrists really help me too. Keep your back up too for mental state. You feel better. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, if you're slumped over it, it doesn't make you feel good mentally as well. I've heard. Nathan, I'd try the wet palette again, blend a paint or two. It's game changing. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm gonna have to give it a go at some point. I'm a bit stuck in my ways, but I feel like maybe I should.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't wet blended anything really until summer last year. I tried it kind of in the past and kind of prior to using wet palette, and it just ended up as a massive mess. But I watched. I mean, the miniatures I just showed you there. They are Middle Earth. They're from the Journeys in Middle Earth game. And there's a guy on YouTube who does excellent video tutorials.
What's his name? Do you know?
Sorastro Painting.
How do I spell that?
Sorastro.
Okay.
And I think particularly with these ones, they're kind of geared towards kind of introducing new techniques.
Amazing.
He's really good at explaining what he's doing, and kind of what consistency paint you need to be working with, and kind of just painting along with those, and learn so much about where you're meant to be placing highlights. I've always generally been able to put paint where I want it. It's just the knowing where I'm meant to be putting it that's been a challenge for me.
Yeah, that's a bit. I mean, good. Thanks for giving this guy or gal a shout out, because I'll put a comment to a link in the description for people who are interested. I've just quickly searched and I see a Lord of the Rings painting series. But either way, just useful tips for painting. I'm always intrigued. I never know where to start with looking for painting tips, like painting. I've seen lots of people who paint miniatures and do like, this is how I paint this, but the techniques is the trickiest bit, and it's hard to know where to start to learn new techniques. But I'd love to give them a go, because anything that helps improve things is great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite new to quite a lot of these techniques, so I'm by no means an expert in any of them. In fact, quite a few of them are applied very roughly in a kind of bit of a rudimentary fashion, but just knowing where a technique might be appropriate and recognizing that, even if you don't do it masterfully, it can have a great effect on a miniature.
Well, brilliant. If anyone has any more questions for Ben, do drop them below, because it's coming to the end of the stream soon. I'll give people a fair bit of warning to throw out any more questions, but I'm a baby. I need to get some shut eye because I'm up early in the morning. So, but it's been really interesting seeing all these the pictures and some of the analysis that you've had of some of the painting techniques. I asked at the start of the stream, just while people are loading up their questions, are you picking up any of the new miniatures? I asked George about this, but there's the Easterlings and the Treebird and stuff. Have you got your eyes set on anything for this weekend?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a magpie, and I kind of. I think I'm going to get a try for the new dice and the tree beard. I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. People have been mentioning. I can't unsee it now. The Mary's left hand.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is
a
a
giant
bit.
hand.
Yeah.
It's sometimes the angle. It looks funny, but yeah, it's a lovely, lovely model. I mean, I do. I think I will pick one up at some point, but I do have one at the moment, so I'm not desperate. But yeah, that'll be it'll be a really nice painting job. I think the beard is particularly well done, and the sort of the face. So yeah, it looks really cool. The Easterlings are definitely on my list though, and I mentioned earlier on the stream, if anyone wants to win the dice or the Easterlings, join on the Patreon. You can become a patron and sort of kind of a tip jar for Entmoot, and you get to win stuff. It's amazing. Ben, there's some questions coming in. Ed, welcome. I haven't seen you in the stream. You must have been lurking all night, or maybe just joined. Any tips for painting white without making it look chalky or blotchy?
Yes, it was one of the things.
Yes, and they're secret.
I've written some crib notes in case we didn't get any questions, and this was kind of one of the things you see asked quite a lot. If I'm painting a white, I mean, obviously there's various tones. I kind of use this, which is an acrylic ink. You'll be able to get it from like Hobbycraft or something like that. This is the Dalarani one. Liquitex also do one, which is virtually exactly the same. It's a lovely consistency.
So what? Just remind of those brands again, because I can imagine people forgetting them straight away. I know I have.
This is the Dalarani ink acrylic.
Dalaroni, okay.
Yes, and there's also one by Liquitex, which is probably exactly the same. It lists the pigment, and the pigment will be PW6, which I think is titanium white. And this stuff is great. I use it for loads of different things. I put it through the airbrush for my zenithal highlighting.
So that would be very. So if it's an ink, it must be quite watery.
Yeah, it's really quite. It is very kind of thin, but it's also very opaque, which means it goes on really. You get a good white, but it flows off the brush really well. The other nice thing about this, because I mix it in kind of, if I'm highlighting up from black, I mix it in to kind of create greys, and it when you put it on, it has this excellent effect where it kind of, it's hard to, it kind of bleeds into the paint below, so it always kind of smooths its own transition.
Oh wow, yeah, because I suppose it's because it's a bit liquid. It's got a little bit of translucency, I suppose.
It's really interesting stuff, but there's loads of kind of uses for it. You can do really fine white lines with it. I've not looked at a white paint since I've discovered this.
Well, there you go. That's a tip from Ben. I have actually just tried the what do they call them? The washes, the new Citadel wash contrast paints. And I was slightly concerned that their tip, the contrast white isn't white, it's just grey. It's just like really watered down grey, but it's not bad. I had a go with that, and it did work quite well. But I painted Saruman not so long ago, just doing the old traditional method, and I get exactly what whoever it was talking about. Sorry, I've forgotten who asked this. Was that Ed? I got quite a chalky white. I'm quite happy with the model, but it does look quite chalky, and the sort of recesses are a bit sort of janky, but it's all right. So I'm still quite happy with it. So let's just crack through a few more of these comments. James says, do you ever feel you're bored of paint schemes and want to try non-law based ones? Seems like I'm in other games it's encouraged, but in MESBG you do get the odd funny comment. What do you think of that, Ben?
I'd encourage people to explore any paint schemes they like. My dwarves aren't the typical. Don't think I sent you any photos of them, did I?
No, I don't think it was.
My dwarves are done in a kind of bright purple, and the goblins I obviously haven't used the traditional red. Yeah,
and that's different,
kind of
but
alternative.
Yeah, it's a little alternative, but it doesn't. I don't think you get any funny looks for that one. They look great, and they're feel goblin-y. But yeah, I know what you're saying there. Actually, people do sort of get a bit more funny in the SBG range. But I think I personally, as much as I enjoy painting in movie specific colours, I like seeing people who haven't. I know a guy in my local area, Harry. He has some really lovely elves, and they're all painted in different colours. And he's painting Easterlings in, I think it was green and silver, or was it purple and silver? But either way, they look really cool. So absolutely. Yeah,
colours go really well together.
Yeah, and I would always encourage people to do it. But and the other way of doing it is do models that aren't in the film. So like your Clansman of Lamadon and your Canned and all those sorts of things. That you can really go to town with those sorts of things. And Woses, I did my Woses in the slightly different schemes.
Yeah, I mean, I only tried to keep the colours from the film for the Fellowship, really, and even then, I took a few bit of an artistic license with it, kind of Legolas's leggings and boots, and I stuck a bit of blue in Gandalf's overcape, just so it wasn't all quite so monochrome.
Well, Gandalf's a tricky one, isn't he? Because and the same with all the wizards, to be fair, they all end up, if you're not careful, looking a bit too one colour. You know, Gandalf the grey looks really grey, but you've got a nice blue tint, and it doesn't look out of place. And I think his hat in the books is described as being slightly blue, isn't it? So I don't think you can worry about those sorts of things, but you've got to do something with it, otherwise it will just look drab. And like even Aragorn, I think in the films he's basically just wearing black leathers, which is impossible to paint really in the way that you do in the film without it looking ridiculous or looking like a ringwraith. So I think you've got to take a bit of liberty, haven't you? Let's crack on. But Commander Kaiser says, Ben, can you paint my Fellowship, please? You don't do commissions, do you, by any chance?
No, I get limited painting time, and I kind of use it as a way to kind of de-stress from work, because I find it occupies my mind really well. I'm kind of just focused on that, so I'm really kind of grateful for the clarity I get while I'm painting, and I can just, anything else that's happening in my life kind of just melts away. So I don't want to feel like I have to get home and paint to kind of fulfill a obligation.
I completely understand that. That makes a lot of sense. And actually, the work that some of the times that I've painted for tournaments and stuff, it becomes a chore, and it's I think in the last year, the one good thing about this last year has been that I've painted things when I've wanted to, and I've really enjoyed them rather than feeling like I'm forced to do something. So there we go. Commander Kaiser, do you do much airbrushing? Lots of people talk about that a lot.
No, not really. I do have an airbrush. It was an impulse buy about 4 years ago when they had one in Aldi. I think I got an airbrush and a compressor set. What is it? A Work Zone one for 70 quid. To be honest, I just use it for base coating and pre-shading at the moment. I don't think this one's particularly accurate enough to actually paint any details with.
Interesting. There you go.
Forward is something I want to expand on, but I think I've got a lot of other things to kind of refine at the moment before moving on to that, I think.
Fair enough. Nathan says, what's the worst member of the Fellowship to paint? I think they all look amazing, so, you know.
Let's see. I think the worst one I did paint was Frodo, but I think I'd moved house and everything had gone into storage for 3 months, so I think I just probably didn't have my eye in. I think Boromir was probably the hardest because I really hate painting black.
Yeah, but it's come out really nice because you've got sort of a slight bluish or sort of bluey grey kind of tone to it, which works really nice. I mean, I couldn't criticize any of them. They look amazing, and even down to the detailing on the Boromir's horn, which is fantastic. And I probably would just, I think in fact my version, I painted it gold and I shaded it, and then that's it. So brilliant. Let's see, a couple more questions. Do you have an Insta handle or a Facebook page or anything like that? James wants to see more.
I don't have a Facebook page. I do have an Instagram. It's,
go for it. What's that?
middle.earth.miniatures.
And actually, I did mention this in if you've seen the post on the GBHL, the top of GBHL, the post on there has it quoted in it, and you've got some of your pictures now. I think I might have linked to it. I can't remember, but there you go. Middle Earth miniatures.
Yeah, I think I'm linked on there as kind of Ben Fowley actually.
Okay. Maybe I should have.
It does go to the page.
Okay, fabulous. There you go. Middle Earth miniatures. If you want to look out more, Nathan says, "What's the most pointless member of the fellowship?" Unrelated to painting, but what's your final thought? What do you think?
It's kind of least favorite, most pointless in game, or
whatever you.
I always thought Frodo was a bit of a wet blanket in the movie.
He is a bit of a wet blanket, isn't he? But he's a true hero in the books. But there you go. Ben, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to pick your mind. And it's been really interesting stream actually to delve into both the game and the painting side of things as well. And I think my internet is suffering, so apologies if we're going all blotchy or something. But it's giving me warning, so probably a good time to cut things off. So Ben, absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for joining in. Apologies for getting you a bit later than no, it's absolutely fine. Apologies for getting a bit later than I expected initially. So. It's been a pleasure. I'll beat you off and I'll sign off. But thank you very much in the meantime for all your tips and letting us use your pictures for nice stuff. Cheers. Cheers. He's back. He's gone. There we go. Ben Fowley there. Middle Earth Miniatures, as you can see at below the bottom. So that's it for Entmoot Live. Thank you very much for all of you who've been watching the whole stream. I know people have been dipping in and out as you'd expect, but it's been a pleasure this evening talking two different types of things. I have some ideas for the next stream, but I would really appreciate it if you have ideas, drop them in the comments below. Probably not the live chat because I'm not sure that survives afterwards. But if you do post a comment underneath, just let me know what sort of things you'd like to hear. More of painting, more of gaming, more of whatever. But I do have some ideas coming up for the monthly streams which will happen on Thursdays, though not necessarily always the third Thursday of the month. But that's kind of one vaguely aim for, the second or third Thursday of the month. With that in mind, I mentioned a couple of times overall over the podcast, if you're a patron, I'll be doing a patron prize draw. So if anyone joins into the patron, then you get a prize draw and you get Easterlings and dice this month, because I think I missed a month and I give away something every month. So Easterlings and dice. It's going to be amazing as long as I get dice. So 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, we'll be signing up for some dice. So thanks everyone for watching. Do check out, there's going to be an Entmoot podcast again, and I think it will be next Tuesday, I think, providing it's all edited in time. And more videos are on the way. I'm painting ruffians like a bad boy, because I've got I think it's the third. I've got 3 squads of ruffians now that are painted for my 1,000 points, plus the standard Middle Earth ones. So thank you to everyone who's joined in the 1,000 points of ruffian campaign, and to everyone who's watched me build rivers badly and the Bree scenario, which was great fun to play along and make. I hope you enjoyed that. So thank you very much. All the comments, really appreciate it. And I shall sign off and hopefully see you very, very soon. Boo-ra-rum.